Guys, let's get into it. First one is a question we get a lot on the forums, and this is a really important topic. And this is where experience pays off. Rick and I combined 40 years experience in this game. This is where it's going to pay off for you guys. So let's talk about tips for getting back on cycle after a long time off from steroids. So, Rick, I know that you've been through a lot of shit in your life. Sometimes shit happens. You got to get away from the game. You got to take a long break from steroids. And then you're like, shit, it's time for me to get back in the game. Give some advice here. What have you done?
You have two aspects to think about there. Number one is physical. Number two, mental. And no particular order of importance. They're both just as important. Medical, obviously, Steve, like you always say, blood test, make sure you run tests, make sure you're fine. Get a full physical, best as you can. Especially if you were one of these guys using steroids in your mid-20s and now you're mid-30s, early 40s and trying to jump back in the game and really took that much time off. You have to make sure to get blood work done, make sure to get full run physical, make sure you get fully looked at and make sure that you're physically able to do anything. Two, mental game. This is where the mental game part comes in. Did you take time off from just steroids and you were training natural and now you want to add steroids again to continue as natural training? Or did you take time off from the gym altogether? That's a different story. If you took off a year, 2 years from the gym, something ridiculous like that, then yeah, I mean, you need, I would say minimum 2 months of natural training back in the gym before you even, per year. So I'd say 2 months of natural training per every year that you were off from the gym. If it really came down to that, if you took like years off, like months off, you need to do something to prove to yourself more than anything that you're consistent and you're back in the game. You know, steroids are something that you use to sort of reward yourself for the consistency, right? It's not something that you should use to motivate you to stay consistent. It's something that you use to reward yourself for the consistency. And here's why. Because steroids could and would maybe have an adverse reaction in your health. And it's just not worth it to go through the toxicity and go through the things that steroids could be doing to your health if you're not going to take 100% full advantage of it and really be doing the right things every single day. When you use steroids as the mental crutch to kind of keep you motivated, to keep you back in the game, you're wasting most of the money you spent on them. And you're also taking steroids that you're not really taking full advantage of. You're not really gaining everything you can from them. And you're still taking dosages that can hurt you long term if they will. So definitely the mental aspect of it, you know, and I guess Steve can talk a little bit more about that specific question. You know, did you just take time off from steroids and you stay consistent with your training, or did you stick out of the gym altogether? If you stayed out of the gym for a while, you need to be back into training natural for a while before you get back on steroids. And that's providing that before you even did steroids, you train naturally 5, 6, 7 years like you should before you started doing steroids. That's also should be taken into account. If you're one of these guys that trained for a little while, did a quick cycle, fell off again, took a couple of years off, and now you're coming back into training again, and you want to do another cycle, just, you know, you're not the guy we're kind of talking to, really. You're not the guy who we're hoping will listen to this podcast. We want guys that are consistent and that are about this lifestyle and that take this seriously and are not just here for a couple months and gone again and here for a couple months, because those are the guys that get hurt and that go around telling everybody their nipples lactated and they got gyno and, you know, they lost hair and all this stuff. You know, the guys who just come in irresponsibly, use this stuff, not consistent with their training, are not about the lifestyle, and end up hurting themselves, giving the compounds a worse reputation than they already have,